few days ago, in the dying days of February 2024, we woke up to the news of the National Assembly that will bring out a new constitution in 24 months. The principal officer of the National Assembly was boasting. And when we began to look at how they said they were going to do it, immediately it came to our mind that in December of 2023, Olisa Abakoba, addressing the colloquium event of Gosul Akpabio in Abuja with Tinubu, their head boy present, telling the government and the National Assembly what they could do to write a new constitution without reference to anybody else. He cites section 4.1 of the 1999 constitution. He was telling the National Assembly all kinds of powers that they had, which they were not exercising, which they didn't even know about. He went as far as saying that the sovereignty of the people of Nigeria now vests personally in the president, and that the National Assembly has the power they could draw to write a new constitution, a brand new constitution, all that. Of course, we did issue a rejoinder, and people can go back to it to find out what NINAS told Olisa Abakoba in the kind of heresy, jurisprudential heresy he had come to preach. He even invoked the name of Professor Benwabweze, who had recanted. Olisa Abakoba was invoking a position that Professor Benwabweze had recanted from when we confronted him in 2013 about the locus of the sovereignty of the peoples of Nigeria. Where does it reside? Is it the government that holds the sovereignty, or is it the people that own their sovereignty and instituting a government by way of the constitutional arrangements they make? And so it was wrong to suggest that the sovereignty of the people were now in the hands of the government, so that the government could write a constitution, because constitution making, for those who still do not understand it, constitution making requires constituent powers. The powers of the National Assembly, the mandate, the legislative mandate of the National Assembly is for law making and the oversight that goes with it. But constitution making is a totally different ball game. And anybody who is still at the level of imagining that the hired management of a company will now be the one to write the memo and articles of that company to the exclusion of the shareholders, the promoters, and the owners of the company. That's what it sounds like. The constituent components of Nigeria, the sovereign constituent components of Nigeria, whose sovereignties are aggregated into the Union of Nigeria, exclusively hold the right to make out their union agreement, which we call constitution. And that is elementary jurisprudence. For somebody to now say, oh, you can go and do it in this other way, so that you can go and write another constitution and bring in place of standing on a certain provision of the 1999 constitution that we have already defeated completely. That constitution, our case against it is that if anybody wants to know what has happened to the 1999 constitution, for which we declare it dead, go to the preamble and read the lies by yourself. That we, the people of Nigeria, having firmly and solemnly resolved to live in unity as one indivisible, indissoluble country, do hereby make and give unto ourselves the following constitution. These are all lies, and it's not something we have to come to prove afresh, because the decree number 24 by which that constitution was brought to life is also printed in the document. The author, Absalom Abaka, tells the story of how he formed the committee that went around and came back to him and his co-travelers in the Spring Council of the time. So there's no controversy about the fact that the document is a forgery and a fraud. And what NINAS has done across the last 24 years, since after the 1999 imposition of the document, had been to organize the owners of that sovereignty to retrieve their sovereignty so that they are no longer being killed, they are no longer being impoverished, they are no longer being enslaved under that falsehood imposed by a section of the country using their military wing. That's what happened to all of us. And so the question of, in the midst of what has happened, the fact that there's a consensus, there's a countrywide consensus against that instrument, the 1999 Constitution. And that consensus is such that we have now asserted, because you have to assert your self-determination, that it is that sovereignty that belongs exclusively to the people is the basis of self-determination. They are now deciding for themselves, because both the sovereignty and the self-determination that flow from it are inalienable. The dispute, Nigeria is now a disputed union. If anybody doesn't know, go and find out what NINAS put out, what the Nigerian Indigenous Nationalities Alliance for Self-Determination, NINAS, put out 16 December 2020, the constitutional force majeure. Research it. And you go to what the nationalities are saying about their union and the terms of their union. Because the question of union is by itself, and the question of the terms of the union by itself. So there are two separate questions. One is like the memo of a company that says Mr. A, B, and C are now bringing themselves to form together to form XYZ Limited. That's the memo. Then you go to the articles where, having formed their enterprise, they now spell out the details of how they're going to be relating as members and owners of that enterprise, how they're going to admit new people, how they're going to exit, how they're going to treat their profits and their losses, and all kinds of things in between. And so it is for certain a wrong, totally wrong, and we are prepared to have a debate with anybody who feels able to come to say, including the Olisabakoba, that is misleading this bunch of, I don't know how to describe these people who are sitting on the sovereignty of the people, sitting in Abuja, the refuge camp of regional renegades they call Abuja, totally secluded from the people, sharing the blood of the people in the name of allocation, in the name of governance, having, standing on the constitution that hijacked the sovereignty of the people. And the people have organized themselves in the process that will see them retrieving their sovereignty, either into a new political arrangement, that's a new union they agree completely among themselves, or unilaterally taking their portion and taking a walk. We had Professor Shoyinka talking about it only a few days ago.
When the word restructuring is bruited around, we often hear the challenge, hey, what do you mean by restructuring? Well, I don't even like the word restructuring. I prefer the expressions like reconfiguration, decentralization. Everybody can grasp that. Decentralization. And those who lead us, they recognize the necessity of it. They recognize the importance, almost the inevitability of it, until they get in power. Yes, that's the difference. Until they get in power. Deconstruction, reconfiguration, decentralization, all this is necessary in order to maximize development. We speak about food hunger because it is real, but palliatives are temporary stopgap policies. They do not reach to the heart of the problem, which is one of decentralized development as massively as possible.
Professor Shoyinka did identify, even not being a lawyer, he had been involved in this process sufficiently from the days of Nadeko when he was operating as Nalicon. He became co-convener in the Pronaco that began to organize the people for how they were going to rework their union. He was co-plaintiff with Nooro and Ojukwu in the suit that went to court to say that the 2007 and 2009 that went to court to, to establish the false basis, to challenge the legitimacy of this, the fraud you see in my hand. And so he's been involved sufficiently to be able to do what he did at the 50th anniversary event of Punch newspaper, where, I'm talking about Soyinka now, where he was explaining to the country that Nigeria has come to where we have to either dismantle it peacefully so that people don't die, or we go to rework it wholesale. That reworking, he says, instead of talking about restructuring that nobody seems to know how to describe, that it is a reconfiguration of the union, a wholesale reconfiguration of the union, which starts with the dismantling of the bad arrangement that is not working. We have all seen it's not working. How long shall we maintain this pretense? He said reconfiguration. He also identified the fact, the people who have to do that business of that reconfiguration. It is the constituent components of Nigeria, the Yoruba, bringing their Yoruba land to federate with the Ijo as Ijo that is on Ijo land, and the Igbo on Igbo land, and Berom on Berom land. These are the peoples of Nigeria, not any group of people you meet in Osho, the marketplace, or the market no, it is identify the land, because we're talking about aggregation of lands and peoples into one political union. So that arrangement that brings them together. You cannot come and fence them, from outside like the British did in 1914. You just came there without talking to any one of them. You fenced the external the boundaries, and then you called it a name and began to tell them that they are now in marriage amongst themselves. That's how we came here, and now it has injured us sufficiently, and we have organized. We who are the victims of that bad arrangement have organized. As there's no difference between the amalgamation of 1914 and the amalgamation of 1999. They were both done by fiat, with no reference to the people who are going to be federating. And so, unfortunately for the authors of this fraud, they put our signature as the authorization for this abomination, and that is what we are pulling back. And as Professor Soyinka did point out in his lecture at Punch event, that there's this, like demonic fear of, paralyzing fear that this Nigeria will break up. It is in refusing to go to discuss the union and the terms of the union that you are now providing a guarantee that the union will break up. What we are doing, what NINAS is doing, is the last opportunity. Those who want to have a union will have to get to that. Otherwise, right now, we have no union. The instrument that brought the union, that is keeping the union right now, has been defeated. It's dead. The National Assembly has acknowledged it by going to search for a new constitution, which they have no power to make. And so, let us be clear-minded that the only thing that can happen, like we saw in the case of Yugoslavia, they refused to discuss. It went up in smoke. Today we have Croatia and the other countries that came out from it, Macedonia, 6 countries. But we saw the festival of blood that preceded, because they refused to discuss. But we look also at the old Soviet Union. It came to where they just went back to their natural fault lines, and we have 16 countries or so, 15. We don't know what will happen to Crimea eventually, So it is in that sense that we once more invite everybody to take this opportunity of come down from our high horses, all of those who think they can keep Nigeria by brigandage. We come down from our high horses, get into a transition as quickly as we can, and go discuss those 2 questions. If we don't, by that act of refusing to, we're only saying farewell to the failed Lugadian experiment of 1914. So we come back to telling the National Assembly that no alphabet will be taken from this 1999 constitution. And if anybody would then say, oh, we are going to amend it, like we saw, I don't know who on behalf of the Bar Association of Nigeria, before Lisa Bokaba came to preach his nonsense to them, you know, the Bar Association had issued a notice inviting all the lawyers in Nigeria to please come with memorandum for how National Assembly will do amendment of everything that needs to be amended in the constitution. The contention of NINAS, in case anybody had been deaf or dumb all this while, the contention of NINAS is simple. We have not made any constitution, full stop. We neither met, we didn't agree, nor write any. We just did not do what was alleged to have been done, which was now basis of which became basis of the instrument that has now hijacked our lives. With a 68-item exclusive list, like 68 chains. When you hear exclusive list, it is like tying somebody up or a group of people with 68 different ropes, chains. That I don't have electricity is because there's one item on that list that says only the federal government can generate and transmit to me. So they shut down my Oji River in Enugu and plunge me into darkness in Aba and Onitsha and Nnewi and everywhere in between. You can't do your highway. You can't do your port. You can't do your security. Your security. They take the asset by that exclusive list. They take the asset, economic asset. They take the power to work that asset. So the jaw and their oil and gas. Nigeria takes the oil and gas with that exclusive list. Nigeria takes the right to refine with that exclusive list. So they are selling, they are refining. If you take any quantity, you become a criminal. Because Nigeria, there's only one criminal in the arena. The Nigerian state that is coming to take without talking to the owners. What is the definition of robbery or stealing? Is when you come to take without, the consent of the owner. If Nigeria were to cease to exist today, who will be the owner of this body of waters? Who will be the owner of each of these lands? The Yoruba know the beginning and the end of their land. It's not disputed, and that is the basis of sovereignty. That's the basis of self-determination. That they are in their land unchallenged by any other group. They've not been conquered or dislodged. As it is with Yoruba, so it is with Ijaw, so it is with Igbo, so it is with Ogoni, Anam, Efik, Urobo. Everybody knows their lands. And the Nigeria we're talking about is the aggregation of all these lands. The fact that the National Assembly is now setting out to go and write a new constitution is an admission of the truth that the old constitution is dead. And what that means is that right now, the business to discuss is whether the constituent components of the defunct Federation of Nigeria, because the union anchored on that constitution is out of the way. But there are still the Yoruba, there are still the Ijaw, there are still the Igbo, there are still the Ogoni clustered around here. There are still people in Abuja sharing beer and wine in the name of governing Nigeria and presiding over Nigeria and legislating for Nigeria. All that can be going on. But the serious business that has turned up to be done now, very urgently too, is to settle the question, the two questions Bola Ige raised a long time ago. Do we still want to federate? That's the peoples of Nigeria, not anybody else. And if yes, on what terms? Those are the two things that have to be settled before any other business. If those two things are not being done, I can assure you that the collapse, the death, the demise of the 1999 Constitution means that the union anchored on it is no more, and therefore the sovereignties confiscated and conscripted into that Nigerian union are now free to be taken by those who can organize themselves. Their sovereignty is inalienable. Their right to determine for themselves how they live in their space is inalienable. Combine the two and juxtapose with your dead instrument. The union, the agreement to unionize is what we call the Constitution. And we knew what we agreed upon. We agreed to be a federation. And we are no longer a federation. We agreed to be a secular state. We are no longer a secular state. Because some people imposed Sharia. Because some people, fractured that federation. into what it has become, a unitary state. The other day we saw Gowon going about talking about how beautiful things have become. But he's not looking at what is happening on the plateau. That people are being slaughtered in the manner they are being slaughtered. Why is this so? He was part of how he was at the center of, he was the one that fractured the 4 regions on the 27th of May in 1967. It was on that day, by decree number 14 of 1966, that Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon, who is still loafing around paying for Nigeria that is a criminal enterprise, paying for Nigeria that feeds on the blood of its own citizens, that it shall be well with Nigeria. That's what he's doing, 50, 60 years after the evil they created in place of the Nigeria that should have worked for everybody. And so the issue is, we are no longer a federation because somebody divided the 4 regions of the time into 12 states, took all their economic assets, all their assets and powers, handed over to an omni, that there's some kind of a fraud, an illicit federal government, because you can't have a federal government without a federation. We don't have a federation anymore. We have a country, quite all right. It is that country that is the unitary, that's become the monster that is killing people in the Middle Belt, confiscating people's assets in Lagos and Port Harcourt, making life impossible for the ones in Aba and Onitsha. Because without electricity, where do you go? Without road. I saw some people rejoicing about geometric, and then some loafers again come from somewhere to say, oh, Southeast Development Commission. What kind of lunatics are we talking about like this? The same madmen who did not find the presence of mind to implement the reconstruction and rehabilitation and reconciliation of 1970 are now going to develop the dotting circle they created east of the Niger, the one they call Southeast. It takes being mad, it takes being out of your sense to think that you use this constitution to confiscate the sovereignty and the assets of people. Then you sit in Abuja and set up Southeast Economic, Southeast Development Commission. Has Niger Delta become El Dorado since you created Niger Delta Development Commission? That the East should now begin to rejoice. And characters like Enyinna Baribe and his co-travelers from that part were thinking that that was the better thing to do. We insist that our sovereignty cannot be subjugated to anything that does not take off from our own consent. Whatever it will take, that monster that is sitting on our sovereignty and trying to come to build our road for us, build electricity for us, build our schools for us, as if we have gone lame, as if we are no longer able to think. We can't elect who govern ourselves. You set up INEC, 68 items, everything that has gone wrong with Nigeria flow from this instrument of death. Those 68 chains are the reasons Nigeria is the way it is now, and nothing is going to change. Whether you think of economy or security, nothing, absolutely nothing is going to change. The only thing that is guaranteed, for every day we keep this instrument, the only thing that is guaranteed is that the union will go up in smoke. And I tell you, whatever it will take to bring down that stupid union, defined by this constitution, is what those who understand, who want life in place of death that Nigeria is dispensing, those who want freedom in place of the bondage that they've been locked into by a bunch of determined criminals who have now captured the state at the same time that Fulani is flowing into this place to try to take it for themselves. Let us get sensible for once. Let us listen now while we can. If anybody is stupid enough to think that this constitution will be basis of union for any length of time going into the future from now, I'm sorry for that person. Very sorry for that person. National Assembly, you are committing treason against the rest of us. You were sent to go to make laws under the constitution that we have made. We have not made any constitution. That's our contention across the last 24 years. The proof is there in the document. So if you choose to stand with the enemy, to say, on this constitution you stand forever, you are pitching yourself on a head-on collision with the people you claim to represent. And God save you the day they are going to wake up to that realization that you are the one behind their torment, not anybody from afar. Because it is because you all gather in Abuja, validating this instrument, swearing to defend and uphold it, including the ones that are their local agents across the state, the governors and the senators and the house members. All of you are together. Anybody who can swear to defend and uphold this constitution is the very enemy the people are looking for at this time. They are hungry now. They are breaking into warehouses. They are going to they will go beyond those warehouses if you don't come down from your high horse for us to go and find a meaningful solution to this problem. NINAS has placed a comprehensive plan, a well thought out process involving the peoples of Nigeria across these 24 years that have been taken to the international circuit for stakeholders to get to know. The only people who are not paying attention are the ones who sit in Abuja pointing guns at everybody else. The National Assembly hear it and hear it very clearly. Nothing built on this constitution will stand, no matter what you do. And if it is the stupidity that Oris Abokaba sold to you in December of 2023 that you are relying on, then the mediocrity that govern your affairs in Abuja has come to life. That you do not know that it is not in your place to make constitution. And you forgot that as recent as 2021-22, there was an attempt to amend constitution and NINAS challenged it. NINAS was able to countermand it by telling the states not to discuss resolution about, what do they call it, concurrence. And the National Assembly announced that the amendment has failed and that the National Assembly, in any event, does not have the power to make constitution. That people who are demanding a new constitutional arrangement, it's not about going to write another constitution. It's about first dismantling what is not working. Second, getting the owners of this, identify the people who federate. They are the ones who have to agree among themselves. They have to renegotiate. Our union has failed. They have to renegotiate it. There's no other way to go. The only other thing that can happen if no meeting is called soon enough is that unilateral actions are going to follow. Nobody's going to submit himself to be killed to the last in the manner that Nigeria is coming upon them. You remove everything that can make a people survive. You share their blood right in their presence, and you tell them that it had to remain so, even when they have remained peaceful in their pain, working out how to resolve it, non-violently. You are sucking their blood. You are inviting them to rescue themselves from you. That's what you are doing. And so, let nobody be in any doubt of any nature. I speak on behalf of the Vanguard group for how these things can be done peacefully. We have the body of knowledge for how it can be done. We have the framework that has been connected with the various owners of the territories you call Nigeria. If you think you have become stronger than all of us and you have become the owner of our sovereignties, we leave you to your devices. We stop here.